Hello, my name is Davila Jackley, and I am 19 years old. I am a current Providence student. I will be the new student government president on the Providence Liston campus. I work at the Boys and Girls Club 5 days a week, and I juggle 5 classes, all by maintaining a 3.9 GPA. Yeah. Recently, I had the opportunity to join the 2020 College Leadership Rhode Island class and Phi Theta Kappa Honor Society. I am currently majoring in political science and communication. It is my ultimate goal to become a community organizer. As student government president, I am most looking forward to increasing student engagement outside of classroom by creating more clubs, in addition to working towards improving the retention rate among current students. Now, I have the honor of introducing our keynote speaker. With a strong desire to educate and elevate members of the community at large, the Right Reverend Dr. Jeffery Williams has dedicated his life as both a spiritual guide and social change advocate. His work as a religious leader began with a 9-person congregation and has since grown to include several hundred members. Internationally, Dr. William oversees 60 congregations in 8 nations and serves as a counsel to a number of local churches and ministries. In addition to being a sought-out advisor to government officials, he has been a regular chapel speaker for both the National Football League and Major League Soccer. To date, Dr. William has published 5 books, including a truly provocative work in 2017 entitled Knowing Your Why, The Key to Unlocking Your Full Potential. Through both his teaching and his actions, Dr. William always strives to lead by example, helping others understand the connection between principle and practice. In 1999, he founded the Cathedral of Life Christian Assembly, renamed the King's Cathedral of Providence. In 2016, Dr. William was consecrated a bishop in the Covenant Ecumenical Fellowship for the New England region, with additional responsibilities in Africa, the Caribbean, and Southeast Asia. Under Dr. Williams' leadership, the cathedral has compassionately distributed more than 200 tons of food, tens of thousands of clothing articles, household goods, beds, toys, and furniture to those in need. He is the founder of the Wells Life Project with a mission to create 12 freshwater wells in Zambia, Africa, and is the vice president of a startup social venture called South-Top Solar Cookers, founded by his wife, Leilani, which will manufacture and distribute solar cookers in Haiti. He has served on several boards and committees, both locally and internationally, working to empower others, including the Council of Post-Secondary Education, the Providence School After School Alliance, and Rhode Island Kids Count, among others. Among his recognitions for achievements in public services are the NAACP Third Goods Marshall Award for Community Impact, a Mega Sci-Fi Fraternity Outstanding Citizen of the Year, and Faith Leader of the Year from Rhode Island Council of Churches. Please join me in welcoming the Right Reverend Dr. Jeffery A. Williams.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Can we give our student president a hand again? I was beaming. She reminds me of my daughter Joy, and but hopefully she won't have the school loans that Joy has that I'm paying for. But again, good morning to everyone. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share with you this afternoon or this morning. And if I keep talking, it will be this afternoon. My mother says it doesn't take all day. And so it's indeed my opportunity to get us in and get us out and get us to the cookout. Thank you again for this opportunity to be here with you this morning. I consider it a chief honor. I really do. I know that you could have had many others come and share a few moments with you, but given the opportunity that you afforded me, I do not take it lightly, and thank you so much for that. To our chair of our education here in Rhode Island, to Ms. Barbara Cottom, and to Dr. Mullins, and to others who are here, thank you for also coming and joining. Hearing the report of the state of CCRI, I think all of you should be encouraged and inspired. Those numbers do not lie, and the progress is real. And so in this, in our present economy, in our present world, it's such an honor to see such progress being made. My comments this morning fall under the title of From Grade School Through Grad School, the Influence of a Superhero. And this picture that you see behind you is me. And that was a few years ago, to say the least. And I thought I'd show you that as we journey through this process from grade school to grad school. If my mother were here right now, she's in Virginia Beach, but if she were here right now, she would be smiling. She said I was a cute baby, and I would agree. My responsibility this morning is to share some thoughts with you to, I think, help set the tone for this coming academic year and perhaps years to come. Yours as faculty and staff and administration is a daunting task, one that cannot be fully appreciated unless one is sat where you sit. Nevertheless, I hope to inspire and maybe even provoke you for the next few moments. My goal is threefold. One, for us to gain a better understanding of the enormity of our opportunity as an institution of higher education. Two, to solicit your deliberate cooperation in influencing multiple generations of students. And three, to unabashedly remind you of how critical you are to the life learning process and success of students. That picture behind that picture there is me, again, scared. And I'm graduating from high school. I don't look very celebratory. That could be because I was just glad to graduate. And the school in which I attended was glad to see me go. I found myself kicked out of school no less than twice in 2 years, despite being a two-time All-American athlete. And I'll explain that story to you. But these pictures are really representative of real stories in a real life. And I want to take a moment as I go through these and tell you a few stories and to help us understand who really are the superheroes in our lives. This woman, Mrs. Cheatham, was a woman who found me in a classroom. I remember Mrs. Cheatham. I revere this lady because she found me in the classroom as I attended the 3rd or 4th grade. I was sequestered in a classroom that was designed for kids who just weren't performing that well. That's a nice way of saying that I was causing trouble, I was in trouble, and they needed to put me in a place where I couldn't get into too much more trouble. But Mrs. Cheatham found me in that classroom. I remember her standing at the door, and she said these words, and I think she was conspiring with my mother and father at the time, but she said, "Give him to me, he can do better." And I remember leaving the classroom. I don't remember much more after that. I could have been unconscious. I don't know. There was a day and time when parents could put their hands on you and not go to jail. And I lived during that time. So it could have been one of those moments when I was taken out of the classroom and she said, "Give him to me, he can do better." Mrs. Cheatham is largely responsible, along with my mother and my father, for the 3 degrees that I received later from hard to get into places. I remember the influence that this woman had on my life, as well as others, as I'll share with you here in a moment. But one thing Mrs. Cheatham did was she believed in my potential despite indicators to the contrary. You and I need to decide something. As leaders of individuals, as molders of destiny, we have to decide if we're going to be people of optimism or pessimism. And as this particular quote recognizes, that when you are optimistic about a person, for instance, it's amazing what they'll rise to in terms of their ability and achievement. I really am a living example of that, as I was labeled a few things, which we'll talk about here in a moment, that weren't too kind or too helpful. But Mrs. Cheatham and others were optimistic, though I was surrounded by pessimism. Let's fast forward, though, to a few years later. While in 6th grade, my family would enter into many painful and family disruptions that would indelibly mark all of our lives. My brother ended up in some very, very serious legal trouble. My sister would be diagnosed with a very rare disease that would eventually claim her life. And all that, during that time, then I was sent away to school. I'm not really sure how that happened either, but I was sent away to school in a city or a town in Connecticut to a program called A Better Chance. It was a public school, but a private program in which 90% of my classmates were white, but the guys I lived with were black and brown. We lived in a house together. We were given $3 a week for allowance. I don't know what that is, but they gave us $3 a week allowance. They made us eat granola. I remember that. And they made us study at a desk from 7 to 10, Sunday night to Thursday night, whether you had homework or not. And in this program, they pulled kids from different areas of our country and different family situations, and all of us were struggling in one way or another. But yet, as a 13-year-old, as a 14-year-old, I was in this program. But something happened in that program that began to change my life. You see, it was in that program that individuals began to speak to my destiny and not my present situation. They began to talk to me about my ability, although I could not see it. You see, the 14-year-old was not that far removed from the kid that was found in Miss Cheatham's class. Although time had passed by, yet and still, I didn't necessarily believe that I could do the work, especially the work that was being required of me. But those stories and that story that I'm sharing with you really does remind me of something. It reminds me of the necessity for people like you to believe in people like me, to believe in an individual despite where they're coming from, who they are, how they arrive in the classroom, but to look past those veneers and see their potential and work toward that potential. The ABC program required that we maintain a GPA to stay in the program. Although I maintained that GPA, don't know how, but I did, I ingloriously got kicked out of school twice for fighting. Sent home, no less. Despite the anger that I manifested and the quite a number of times that I got into trouble and caused problems because I was negotiating so many other factors that others weren't aware of, I managed to get through because of this idea that all hands would be on deck. And it takes a village to raise a child. Those teachers and administrators and coaches, they believed in me even though I didn't really believe in myself. As I mentioned, I was a 2-time All-American soccer player. I lettered in 3 sports. I played internationally in 3 sports, nationally in 3 sports, as well as internationally. I had coaches that influenced me. They kept me focused. They wouldn't let me give up on myself. There were literally dozens of people who influenced and impacted my life. the most powerful tool they used was their belief in my potential. Our chief want is for someone to inspire us to be what we know we could be, Emerson wrote. Education is all about building bridges, Ralph Ellison declared. Let me tell you another story. I got a letter in that April of my senior year of high school that said I was admitted to the incoming class at Brown University. I needed to believe that others believed that I could actually do the work. I didn't have the necessary grades or the SAT scores, but back then, my feet were 800 math and 800 verbal. They believed I could do the work. I convinced them I could do the work if I had to look up every word every day. Those are the very words that I used to speak to one of the deans during the admission process. However, I failed the exact number of courses you could fail in 1 year and still stay in school. I failed them all. I don't know how, but I did. And I got a note in my P.O. box from a dean, Dean Perry Ashley, who's someone I still run into from time to time at Seven Stars Bakery on Broadway. He's an African-American man who put a note in my box and said, "Come see me." And so very nervously, of course, I showed up in his office. He closed the door and proceeded to threaten me with bodily harm. He said to me, "If you do not snap out of this and start getting your academics together, they are going to kick you out of school." Not that I didn't care, but I was struggling. But he believed in me. Dean Ashley believed in me. He offered all the support that I needed, stayed with me through my 4 years. I did not fail another class. And somehow, on Memorial Day weekend, 4 years on time, I graduated from Brown University with a degree in social environmental analysis. It was Dean Ashley. It was Ernestine Whiting, who was in financial aid, and other individuals who happened to look like me, who kept speaking to my destiny and speaking to my potential. I was so unsure that I was going to graduate that I was afraid to open up the portfolio to see the degree. I was very scared, because I had finished my work the last minute, but it got done. However, and I think this is important to note, within my first semester at Brown, I injured my knee, which would require surgery. Again, remind you, I was a two-time All-American soccer player. I fell asleep at the wheel in a borrowed car, flipped it twice on Route 4. The girl I was dating at the time, who happened to go to URI, another conversation for another day, she decided she didn't love me anymore. This all happened within 10 weeks of my first semester there at Brown University. My brother was arrested again and sentenced to another 5 years in prison. I was in such a dark place. I found myself on the 13th floor of the Science Library on the corner of Waterman Avenue and Thayer Street in the city of Providence on the east side, wanting to jump out the window. The only reason I did not jump out the window was that it's locked from the outside. That was on the night of December 4th, 1981. Some of you weren't even born then. But this was all going on under the shroud of darkness while trying to pursue an education. And it took individuals who were empathetic, folks who knew people who were concerned, to push me past what I was going through to get me to and through eventually grad school. Dr. Ferdinand Jones, who was a psychologist at Brown University, who happened to also be an African-American man, who I now have the distinct honor of serving with on the Center for Reconciliation Board some 35 years later, He counseled me. He worked with me. He supported me when at least one professor labeled me as having a learning disability. Can you imagine that? I had a learning disability at an Ivy League school. The odd thing is that this white professor was right about my disability, but wrong about the type of disability. My disability was I didn't believe in my ability. But it took a dean like Perry Ashley, Dr. Alice Brown Collins, Dr. Rhett Jones, Dr. Ferdinand Jones, and others, not to mention the superheroes of all superheroes, Al and Lily Williams, my parents, who believed in me, who got me, who understood me, and who pushed me and would not let me quit. Really, this is my last story. I thought that was a dark period, during which time I was pursuing my education. But a number of years later, I would go through the demise of an 18-year marriage. I was in a full-blown depression, taking 4 medications, grieving the suicide of one of my assistants who took his life on a Friday night, walking 2 teenage daughters through all of this hell. At the same time, in the writing phase of my doctoral dissertation, I put a phone call in to my thesis advisor and friend, Dr. Eldon Villafañe. Dr. Eldon Villafañe is a Puerto Rican social ethicist from Boston University. He happened to be my superhero that day. He wouldn't let me quit. He wouldn't let me stop writing. He wouldn't let me get comfortable in my dark place. He wouldn't let me stop. He kept speaking to my destiny. And he said out of his own mouth, he said, "Jeff, it's the last thing I do. If it's the last thing I do, I will call you Dr. Williams." He was determined. He was more determined in my success, for my success, than I was, especially during those phases and periods of a person's life. The students that come to CCRI and to Rhode Island College and URI and other places, they come with a history. They come with experiences. They come out of very difficult situations at times. And you, as molders of destiny, have this unique opportunity to be their superhero and to help them. But it does require a few unique things, and I want to share those with you here in a moment. But I am sharing this with you, being as transparent as I think this situation would allow, because you are molders of minds and shapers of destiny. You are the bridge over the troubled waters for many. You are Archimedes' lever. You are Michelangelo standing in the front of a block of human marble with the ability to liberate somebody and release their dreams. However, as we are now on the eve of a new year, my question is, do we as a CCRI community of educators, staff, administrators possess the requisite empathy and cultural sensitivity and IQ to take this present group of students from these halls to a place of real viability in the workplace and in life? I pose this question because as I review the research that connects successful pedagogy and cultural competence and put it alongside the lack of diversity within administration, in faculty, there is reason to be concerned, to say the least. I think I remember the statistic that spoke to the fact that 40% of the student body are kids of color. Dr. Ellison, it takes a deep commitment to change and even deeper commitment to grow. Failure is not an option. I like that one. Faculty of color are more likely to use teaching styles that improve learning outcomes. All students perform better on tests when faculty of color are present. Students of color have higher persistence rates at colleges with more faculty of color. Now, why am I sharing that with you when in fact most, I'm sure, really do not determine whether or not or who your colleagues are? I think it'll make sense here in a few moments. Of full-time staff persons of color, only 20% are represented at CCRI. 8% of full-time faculty are persons of color. 1 out of 75 full-time math and English faculty is a person of color. I think those are sobering thoughts. And this last slide, or last chart, is profound for many ways. 0%, no members of CCRI's senior leadership team are people of color. You know why that's really profound to me? Because your president and this college could have not included that in my research. That tells me that this college is positioning itself for real change when nothing and no one and no department is off limits from scrutiny. That says something to me. That really speaks to me. And so, Dr. Hughes, I want to applaud you for that and recognize that CCRI is really working and realizing that it's got real changes that are required. You see, because it took individuals who I could identify with and who could identify with some of my story to help me get through grad school or grade school to a place of grad school. And so we do better, we learn better, we experience better if in fact we can relate to or be taught by or helped by individuals who happen to share part of our story. Now, it's impossible for everyone to be able to have knowledge of everybody's story. But before I'm done here, I'll offer some examples of what I think we can do, though. Historically, only 2% of students of color graduate within 2 years. That was historical data. Projected 2-year graduation rate for students of color is 12%. That's better, but we can do better. All right, now I'm going to turn this into a church service. So I want you to repeat after me. We can do better. All right. There we go. You're at the cathedral now. You're at the cathedral. All right. A full-time faculty and staff, only 16% are of color. Still don't quite understand what of color means. Another conversation. 40% of full-time staff hired in the first year of 2019 are persons of color. So that's progress, no question. But we have to look at some of those numbers eventually as well. But we are making progress. Let the church say amen. Amen. All right. When you show deep empathy toward others, their defensive energy goes down and positive energy replaces it. That's when you get more creative in solving problems. You see, all of us, unless there's really some challenge, all of us have the ability to be empathetic. But we have to be willing to be open to that. We have to be willing to get into people's lives and allow people to encourage people to be more transparent. And as they do that, things begin to change for them and for us. Now, while it's a height of ignorance to think that someone of a different socioeconomic upbringing, race, or for that matter, gender, can intuitively understand the truest and deepest thoughts of another person, there are at least 4 things we can do as individuals and as an institution. What am I saying? It is absolutely, as much as I try, I really do try, but as much as I try to understand what it is to be a woman, It's not happening. I even took a course at Brown University called Women's Studies. I got a C in that class, but I tried. So the only way I'm really going to begin to understand my wife and my daughters is if they talk to me, and I want them to talk to me, and I'm open for them to talk to me, and I begin to try to understand what it is for them to be who they are, and likewise. So that's part of what we're asking of you today. But let me offer these reflection points, and perhaps over lunch you can discuss them and talk about them a little more. Number one, accept the fact that your experience may not have prepared you for the students that you are now charged to shape. You got to just own that. I think it's really helpful to walk in and say, really, I have no idea what your experiences are because mine are very different. That's helpful rather than thinking because I may be older or have more experiences in other areas that somehow intuitively I know what you're going through. I don't know what you're going through any more than someone can know what I'm going through unless you've gone through what I've gone through. So accept that fact. Second, recognize that part of the teaching art is understanding and empathetically as possible the complex mosaic of the student experience. That's part of the teaching. It just can't be something with the clicker and giving kids information. That's not going to help, especially if a child is coming to you in situations that are necessarily less favorable. You're going to need to know something about who they are in order to help them properly. And I believe CCRI is really working hard to do that. Thirdly, recruit, hire, and embrace more diverse educators and administrators. There's no way around that, folks, but we have to be intentional about it, deliberate about it, and have it part of our sight in order for things to change in that way. Fourth, create a cultural mosaic that welcomes and nurtures a learning experience that permeates every single facet of this great college. A few years ago, it was actually spoken directly to me. I heard it with my own ears. I saw the person's lips moving. And they said to me, we can't find any qualified minorities. I wish that happened on a street corner, but it didn't. That occurred in some of our sacred halls. And I heard that, and I saw the person's lips moving. I was in shock. Certain things you just shouldn't say out loud, right? Some things you kind of keep to yourself. But it's culture that trumps vision. So as you and I create a culture that's more welcoming and more inclusive and more diverse, and do it intentionally, it causes individuals, great talent sources of all stripes, if you will, to come and be part of the party. But unless the culture changes, it won't matter what banners you have, slogans you have. It won't matter what your collateral material is. It won't matter what we put up on the board. If the culture doesn't change, nothing changes. There it is. That's my father, Alfonso Williams Jr. That's my Harvard degree. I was so relieved that the ink on that was dry and it belonged to me. Finally, the present challenges that we are facing may not be a direct responsibility of your actions, but they are nevertheless our responsibility to address. Don't waste time trying to find fault. Don't waste time looking so far back you can't move forward. Don't spend so much time saying it's not my fault, I didn't do this. The fact is, you have the responsibility now. Be someone's superhero. We're counting on you. Thank you for your time. Thank you. I was told not to move, so I'm following orders.
Okay. Good morning. Yeah. I was kind of hoping Professor Murray would switch with me, but he told me no. So my name is Laisha Williams. I'm the student government president of Flanagan campus. Thank you, Dr. Williams, for your honest and thoughtful discussion on the importance of embracing diversity at all levels of the college and what it means to us as students. I, too, had a Mrs. Cheatham, someone who recognized my potential and encouraged me to always believe in myself and to continue with my education. That person was Dean Jenkins here at CCRI. And I continue to keep her words of encouragement with me to this day. On behalf of my fellow presidents, President Hughes, and the entire college, it is my honor to present you with this small gift of our appreciation.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I truly believe the key to students achieving their degree is a good support system. As student government president, it is my goal to raise awareness of the many resources available to students here at CCRI. I look forward to interacting with the CCRI community, both student and faculty, to engage in conversations like that of today, to build upon the great work already being done to support students. And now, it is my pleasure to welcome back President Megan Hughes.
How you feeling? I'm glad to be done. Thank you, Laishelle, and thank you, Dr. Williams, for speaking with such authenticity and insight. We are grateful for your vision, your leadership, your courage, and your encouragement. The numbers Dr. Williams shared are sobering. 20% of our full-time staff are people of color, 8% of our full-time faculty, and only 1 of our 75 full-time instructors in English and math are people of color. We have no members of color of the senior leadership team. And I know that having leaders of color is important. It sends a message to our students and to our entire college that this leadership matters and that it's valued. Having leaders of color will help us serve this mission of this great college, even better. I am committed to diversifying our college leadership, and Dr. Williams and I have had honest conversations about the work ahead of us. The encouraging example seen over the first 6 months of 2019, with nearly 40% of our new hires coming from underrepresented groups, can both inspire and teach us. It can show us that it's possible. And I agree with Dr. Williams, we can do this together. In support of this work, we have redesigned our human resources department to support thoughtful and thorough recruitment, launched concentrated outreach to graduate schools that have programs focused on diversity in higher education, and created a diversity, equity, and inclusion task force to implement a governing diversity and inclusion plan. We will continue to prioritize this work, and I ask that you join me in making it a priority. Next Tuesday, we welcome 14,000 students to their first day of academic classes. And I thank you all for coming out this morning to celebrate the start of a new academic year. I'm so looking forward to the year together, and I thank you all for being part of this community.